Hello, Jess here from All the Sparkle with a video using one of the new dies and stamp sets from the Simon Says Stamp Cherished release. I also unintentionally decided to show you how to fix a common crafty mistake, so let's get started. When I first saw the Floral Sparkle die, I immediately fell in love with it and wished it was available as a full cover plate. But then I realized I could make my own cover plate die simply by running the die through my Big Shot over and over. Each time I repositioned the die, sometimes flipping it over and sometimes angling it in a slightly different way to create my pattern. Unfortunately, I can't fit my Big Shot under the area where I film, but hopefully you get the idea. I wanted to create an ombre watercolored background, so I started by smushing spun sugar, dried marigold, abandoned coral, picked raspberry, and festive berries distressing onto my craft mat. I taped a piece of watercolor paper to my hardboard and wet it liberally with water. Then I started brushing color across my paper, cleaning my paintbrush slightly between colors. I went lightest to darkest so the dark colors wouldn't overpower the lighter. Eventually I kinda gave up on the spun sugar and just allowed the dried marigold to take over the top. I used clean water to blend the lines, but didn't worry too much about totally getting rid of the lines as I knew the die cut panel would disguise the lines. Looking back, it would have been easier to use a flat paintbrush, but it's possible to paint it with a round brush. I set it aside to dry while I worked on the sentiment. Next, I stamped the sentiment from Thoughtful Messages onto black cardstock, heat embossed it with white embossing powder, and trimmed it down to a label. Once my watercolor panel was totally dry, I figured out what portion of the panel I wanted to use and trimmed it down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I carefully applied adhesive to the back of my die cut panel, using my finger to rub away any adhesive that got on the wrong spot. I lined it up over my watercolor panel and pressed firmly to adhere it. Then I added my sentiment label with foam mounting tape and added a few sparkling clear sequins and a coating of Spectrum Noir clear sparkle to the sentiment to finish the card. But wait! After looking at the card, I realized that the sentiment label was way too heavy and dark for such a delicate looking background. So at first I tried to wiggle my scissors under the foam mounting tape to trim a fishtail banner, but I still wasn't really happy with the way it looked. At that point I was definitely committed to the card, but knew I needed to do something else. So I ran into the bathroom and brought out the wax dental tape. Now this trick works best with actual dental floss rather than the wider dental tape, but that's all I had on hand and it did work, though it took a little more effort. I wound the floss around my fingers as if I was going to floss my teeth and wiggled it under the edge of my foam mounting tape. Slowly and carefully I worked the floss under the adhesive and eventually I was able to remove the sentiment. Using this dental floss trick helps to break the bond between the adhesive and the paper more gently than just peeling off the sentiment. If I had tried to just pull the sentiment label off, it's more likely that I would have ripped or bent the black cardstock and probably ripped off pieces of the white cardstock as well. I used an eraser to erase the remaining adhesive, and then I trimmed my label to a more dainty size. Since I removed some of the adhesive with my floss, I reapplied adhesive to the back of the foam mounting tape and then adhered it to my card. I was able to sneak it right back in between the sequins. You'll see that I also used my grid work surface to help line up the label. And that's it. You can find links to my blog and all of the products I used in the YouTube description below. If you liked my video, please give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button so you won't miss any of my future videos. Thanks so much for watching, have a wonderful day, and happy crafting!